reduce disproportionate African American child deaths. And for the most part, the answer to the question was some of the recommendations were positive, but most of them weren't because they were not addressing the root causes. And one of the things, I will discuss that more so in number 3, but such as having more education and African Americans providing services and creating policies. The positive that was mentioned was the barbershops. So they really like the direct services or being in the barbershop and that sort of thing as well. So really community centered. So the second question was, how do you feel the community will embrace these recommendations? The answer would be not very well, because African Americans need to train the community. So basically having what I would call African American advocate team or angels to oversee programs and direct services to make sure that what we as African American community is getting done versus it, you know, there's a proposed way and then there's a way that it actually comes out to be. So having like a team or committee put together to oversee everything. And then the last one was what's not here that needs to be. So I'll go from the top and work my way down. So cultural hub, I heard you mention your position. So one thing that came to my mind as you were speaking was to how to give the Black community more access and input in the media. And especially for our senior population, I know that they don't really, oftentimes they're not as familiar with computer technology and that sort of thing. So basically making it more age appropriate across the age span from children to seniors. Also providing training or education with direct services such as WIC, which is something that the lady over here mentioned earlier in one of the conversations, and having the African American committee sit on boards to elect teachers, principals, and again to kind of oversee a lot of our public systems and the input that's being done. And then organize Black community and promote more culturally competent services and have more African Americans receive more funds federally as well as community, the county-wide, state, and allow us, or the African American community, to provide more training and educations in public schools and have more accountability for social services and their workers. So what that would basically emphasize is setting benchmarks, kind of, is how I saw that for social service employees as well as the police officers and the enforcement, I guess you could say, of the policies, and making sure that they're culturally competent and it's a requirement, not just, you know, a suggestion. It's something that needs to happen. So I put like more rehabilitative and educational versus controlling and dysfunctional. Oftentimes, as there was a discussion made earlier, or a comment made earlier, you know, there's a lot of dysfunction within the systems and they're completely not really culturally competent to African Americans, such as CPS and, you know, a lot of the other things that happen within the community, even in the justice system. More African Americans need to be a part of that system.
We are.
As well, and mobilizing the community so that way they can have more access, and again, having accountability. So having someone make sure that our voices are heard, not just a matter of us just going there over and over again and repeating the same things, but accountability, so ensuring that our voices and our opinions are written down and taken seriously, and they are actually implemented. So no more, I guess, just gathering around and having discussions, but also making sure that it's done. And so, and then more African Americans employed in positions to make policies and enforce them. And again, that kind of hubs back to organizing the Black community and having committee to oversee the funding for teachers, state employment jobs that set policies, even on a state level and county level. There's a lot of jobs that set policies and oftentimes African Americans do not feel them. I can give an example of in the state of California Social Services, one of the lead managers who sets policies for the foster care system is not African American. She may have her MSW, but again, education is a great tool, don't get me wrong, but it's also a matter of life experiences and having the understanding as well that also helps. So kind of having like a committee again, or a team of advocates to ensure that African Americans are getting employed in those positions and having a serious, I guess you could say, impact on the policies and enforcement.
Don't forget that you guys talk about jobs too.
Oh, yes.
So creating more, it says entrepreneurial opportunities.
Yes, so
funding,
have more African Americans have entrepreneurial opportunities, more funding pushed into African American communities and hands, and basically have African Americans have, I wouldn't say control, but have more access and, I don't like the word